Committee meeting of Tuesday, March 2nd. Per Governor Baker's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, the public will not be allowed to physically access the school committee meeting. Members of the public can access the meeting via live stream at the link noted in our agenda, which is posted both at the town's website as well as the school's website. The school committee reserves the right to implement additional remote participation procedures and will notify the public of these procedures as soon as practicable. So we'll call this meeting to order. A reminder that this meeting is being video and audio recorded for future broadcast. To our members, if you could please keep yourself on mute to eliminate any background noise during our meeting. So we'll move right into it with the approval of our minutes, payroll, and warrants. If I could request a motion, please, of the approval of school committee meeting minutes of January 5th, 2001.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into our vote. Ms. Benavides?
Mrs. Gomes,
Yes.
Mr. Sumner,
Yes.
Mr. Tebs,
Yes.
Mr. Hood,
Yes.
and Mrs. Downing.
Yes.
Thank you.
If I can request a motion, please, of the approval of the school committee meeting minutes of February 2nd, 2021.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move into our vote.
Gomes,
Yes.
Mr. Sumner,
Yes.
Mr. Tebs,
Yes.
Mr. Hood, Mr. Hood,
Yes.
and Mrs. Downing.
Yes. May I request a motion, please, of the approval of executive session minutes of February 2nd, 2021, not to be released?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, again,
Mrs.
seeing
Gomes?
none.
Mrs. Gomes,
Yes.
Mr. Sumner,
Yes.
Mr. Tebs,
Yes.
Mr. Hood,
Yes.
and Mrs. Downing.
Yes. Finally, the approval of payroll and warrants. If I could request a motion of approval, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, once again, seeing none, we'll vote.
Mrs. Gomes,
Yes.
Mr. Sumner,
Yes.
Mr. Tebs,
Yes.
Mr. Hood,
Yes.
and Mrs. Downing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move into delegation. So we welcome you to submit your comments during this segment of the meeting. Please forward all your comments to the recording secretary, Ms. Benavides, at kellybenavides@acushnetschools.us. And as we've done in the past, I think we'll move forward in our agenda and circle back to delegation, so that gives the public some time to get in your comments. So moving into new business, Dr. Bailey with your report.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Would it be okay if we took Learning at Ford Middle School presentation out of order and we can have that first?
Yes.
Okay, so I'd like to call on Mrs. Sylvia, the Ford Middle School principal, and she will be discussing what we will be viewing. But as you recall, our last meeting, we had highlights of the hybrid model at AES. So today we will be watching some highlights from Ford Middle School.
Good evening, Dr. Bailey. Thank you, Madam Chair, and the members of school committee. In discussing what we wanted to showcase at our community during this time, our staff was in agreement. Despite many challenges we have faced over the last year, there are many reasons to celebrate this success. Our teachers and students have created new and innovative ways to make a school a positive place for learning and growth. So what we did, we went around with our iPad, we took video, teachers submitted still pictures, and we put together an iMovie with some background music. So you will see that we are a one-to-one Google School. Throughout the presentation, you'll see students with their Chromebooks in Google Meets with their classmates, participating in small group work using breakout rooms, whether they are in person or remote. You'll see our new science curriculum, where students are engaging in hands-on investigations. Our new ELA curriculum, you will see students engaging in discussion using textual evidence. Students are active, whether it's in PE, ping pong in the library, or in math class. Teachers have been able to overcome pandemic restrictions and create new and exciting learning experiences. We have more spirit days than ever before. Our students love these days. You'll see a lot of spirit, even dance parties. You can't see their smiles, but they are smiling under their masks. I am proud and excited to showcase the many good things taking place at FMS and would like to take a moment to thank our students, families, faculty, staff, administration, and the school committee for all your support throughout the year. We know great things do not happen in isolation. The beats in the background were made by our music class. Please, if you can put the volume up, there is a few videos that are soft. Please turn your speakers up and enjoy. I am gonna try to share this. Oh gosh, sorry. Share the screen. Oh, Mr. Oliver.
Would you like me to start it, Mrs. Sylvia? Would that be helpful?
Oh, maybe. Sorry, it was up here. Can you start it, Chris?
Sure, if you could just stop your screen sharing, I will start the video.
Oh.
Okay, we'll give this a try. Enjoy the video, everyone.
Thank you, Chris.
Let's review the ham bone. So the ham bone is brush past your leg, brush up past your leg, slap your leg, and then just lift. Okay? Brush, brush, slap. Some people are getting real comfortable in this beating up. We're going to switch hands. 4, 3, 2, switch hands. Same time. Ready? 4, 3, 2, both hands. Okay? Echo me. Do-day-do, do-day-do. Do-day-do, do-day-do. Do-do-do.
So I created this bridge from looking at a bridge called a lenticular truss bridge, and it's basically a bridge that has a curved top, and then right here it has a curve, and it provides a lot of stability to the bridge and makes the bridge really, really strong. So I didn't come to the full outcome, but I did get what was needed bridge, and there's actually a bridge in Massachusetts that is a lenticular truss bridge, so kind of based it off that design.
see how far it can go for increasing either kinetic or potential energy.
Okay, and how are you gonna launch the ball with that? Okay, so you're gonna compress the thing with the ball and then let it go?
What is going on in Florida right now that's shown on your map?
We're gonna have rain.
They're gonna have rain, and do you know why they're gonna have rain? Is it a low pressure system or a high pressure system?
High pressure? Low
Think
pressure.
about rain. Rain is lousy, right? Okay. Can you tell Mrs. Sylvia what this front is?
That's the one point.
Right, that's the warm front. And what's this massive thing that's coming across the United States?
No.
That's the snowstorm, right?
Inside. Slowly, slow down. Remember, 600 kids a year is very slow. Yeah, keep pulling them. All right, so Emma, what kind of boundary is this?
Convergence,
Convergent, right? And how do you know?
because they're coming together.
Connected is just where the magma would be.
Kellogg is interested too back there. Thank you. Yep, Kellogg is looking for it.
Substances of like the clean water. So for the first claim I put, it's just something the substance is the same as the reddish brown water. The second one, I said it's not the same, or none of them are the same. For all the three claims I put.
And you have evidence?
Yes.
Yes, where did you get the evidence?
We took the notes down, but in breakout rooms we're gonna discuss them.
Can you explain it? Don't get unmuted. What just happened here? This is stuff we call this incident out on something. Oh.
This level was like calling it Mr. Van Dam, but I guess Mr. Van Dam was his, Mr. Van Dam was teacher.
Excellent, yes, that's it.
Get the count in your head. My daughter had 73. Can you beat that? Keep it up 10 seconds. If your foot touches the ground, you're done. 3, 2, 1. All right, so record that in your notebook. You're going to now create a coordinate, and we're going to use a sticker to plot this on our coordinate grid. Okay. Let's just space around the graphic one at a time. We could do this based off of 2 questions. The first is the number of years you participated in athletic group, soccer, dance, field hockey, yoga, and then the other coordinate is how many times you can hop on one leg within 30 seconds. Start.
Can you tell me what you did have to do, Ethan, for that?
So I had to connect the LED and the wire to the charger, and I put the LEDs inside of the eyes, and I put the push button up top, so you can turn it back on.
Thank you, Mrs. Sylvia.
Thank
you're
you.
welcome.
That was
No,
great.
Thank you, thank you. It makes me smile every time I watch that.
And it's so great that can still see joy in learning at both of our schools, even during a pandemic. And that's a real credit to not only the principals, but the teachers and all the classrooms and all of the support staff, because they're making it happen each and every day for our students. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing that, Mrs. Sylvia.
No,
Does
thank
anybody
you.
have any questions while she's still here? No, okay.
No questions.
I would just take the opportunity to thank Mrs. Sylvia and her staff and all of the teachers, administrators, for, the work that they're doing during this time, which has just been crippling in so many ways. But to see the kids so happy and it's a credit to you. So appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. See you guys. Good
Yeah,
night.
Thank you,
Thank
Mrs.
you.
Sylvia.
Bye.
All right, so next we have the personnel report. And I would love everyone to join me in congratulating Angie Regari. She was recently promoted to our new Director of Curriculum, not new position, but new for her, Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. She began this role this past week. And she comes to this position with teaching experience ranging from elementary through high school, with the majority of her teaching focused on science at the middle school level. She has served as a Master Teacher Fellow through UMass Amherst and the National Science Foundation, building capacity and evaluating teacher resources, developing professional learning communities, and mentoring educators. So she has several years of experience in school administration, serving as an associate principal in Western Massachusetts prior to her relocating to Acushnet when she took on the role of assistant principal. So I want to, again, congratulate Mrs. Regari for her promotion to her new position. And she's hit the ground running, which has been wonderful. That is the only thing on the personnel report for tonight. Does anybody have any questions?
No, congratulations, Angie.
Congrats.
Excellent. The next thing I'd like to review with you is the FFCRA update. As you know, this is the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And when the committee voted to extend this through March 31st as a benefit to our employees, you had asked for an update each month. And we're now at the last part of this extension, which would be, this month of March. We have to determine whether or not we want to continue with this benefit. But let me go over this month and then we can certainly discuss which way we want to go. So just to remind folks, if you take that report on the very left, that emergency paid leave column, that is COVID, anything that anyone is out for COVID reasons or childcare reasons. And the one on the right, the emergency family medical leave, that is just childcare only. And that's where they can go up to 12 weeks out. The first column that I just discussed a minute ago, they can max out at 10 days. So the thing that I really want to review with you is this past month, February. So if you go all the way over to the right column, and you will see there's dollar amounts in the column, like for example, number 7, you can see what that person utilized. And that was part of a COVID related leave. And then number 12, you can see that person utilized. But you will see, if you go on to the next page, that we only had 6 people in the district utilize this benefit the entire month, and $0 were paid out for substitute teachers, which is great. So basically people received their regular pay. So actually this month, we're in very, very good shape. So what we have to discuss tonight is whether or not we are choosing to extend it or end it. If we choose to end it, I think we risk, there is some employees who may report to work so that they won't lose time if they perhaps are a close contact. And we really want people to stay home when they're sick. We could look at going month to month. Or if we choose to end it, the benefit, people will have to use their sick time. So I would be interested in opening this up for discussion to see what folks think. I'm just happy that, you can compare the numbers at least from December through February, and you see that the numbers are going in the right direction, which is great.
How long can this benefit be extended to, Dr. Bailey?
Yeah, so it's my understanding that it can be extended until the end of the school year. A lot of districts have been unable to maintain this because of the cost to the district. So, you know, we chose to go up through March, and that's why we need the vote tonight as to whether or not we end it March 31st or we choose to go month to month. I think we're kind of like at that place where it's getting much better, right? So
Would it make sense to consider extending for another month and then revisiting next month? Just, I don't know if anything changes from the state in terms of what they might decide in terms of sending people back to school, so on and so forth. Should we extend it for another month and then reevaluate it at that point in time for, say, April or the rest of the school year? Just a thought.
In agreement with that.
Yeah, I'm in, me as well. Yep.
Same
Makes
here.
sense.
Dr. Bailey, can you just
Yes.
remind us that there's some of those costs are offset by some of the expenses that we've already dedicated to, I think, the full-time subs. Am I correct on that?
yes. So
Okay.
for example, if we had a teacher, that's absolutely correct. If we had a teacher who was one of those people there and we didn't bring in an extra substitute and one of the building-based subs took the place while the person was out, then yes, that would be under the building-based sub.
So what we're looking at, is this the net cost to the district, or is this the gross cost?
Kristen, can you help Mrs. Flynn? I'm not sure. I know it's their regular salary. I'm looking at that bottom right column, the $10,000.
Mhm.
That's their regular pay.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
So you think that, so what I'm saying is that this is probably the gross cost without netting out the real expense of it, or I'll say the real expense, the net cost, if this is the gross, then the net cost would be lower than this, correct?
Well, I think what I think I'm hearing is that the real true cost to the budget would be the substitute, the per diem sub cost, right? Because a lot of these absences are covered by the building-based subs, which we either receive the money from the coronavirus relief fund grant, or now we're using surplus funds in the budget to cover it. So we are covering this through those two areas. So really, because people continue to get paid, they're using their paid time under the FFCRA, but we're offsetting the cost with the building-based subs, which we committed to at the start of the year. So really the only cost is, you know, maybe an opportunity cost of not having that person in school that day, right?
Got it.
But having the building-based subs helps out with that because they're more.
Is that the 1,400 here? Is that the incremental cost here? The $1,400, the 7?
I know you've gone over this with Sandy, Paula,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But the 14, it looks like that's a sub cost, the 6 and 1,400. So that's probably the daily sub cost that's hitting our budget.
Right. And you can see the number of days in that column where you had the 1,400. If you go up and look at the numbers, that's the number of days where a substitute was needed, and not talking about the building base up. Yeah.
Okay, so to answer the question, I think then the amounts in the columns, or actually I think the columns on December, January, February, those amounts would be kind of the net cost to the district, correct?
I want to double check with Sandy, because I didn't review that, if it's net or gross, the way she did the calculations. Do you know, Mrs. Flynn?
I don't. I
Okay.
haven't reviewed this report with her, but I'm thinking that this is probably their per diem. Just I'm trying to think logically, that would be what they received in pay for that day, whether they were here or whether they were at home.
That makes sense.
Okay.
I mean, the good news is for February, we didn't use additional substitute teachers. So again, in good shape. But whatever the committee decides to do, I would just need a vote on what your pleasure is.
It sounds like most of us, John, please chime in, are supportive of the review, continuing it through the next month and reviewing
agree.
it at our next meeting. Okay, so if I could request a motion, please, to continue the FFRC through the month of March to be reviewed at the next school committee meeting.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll take a vote.
Mrs. Gomes,
Yes.
Mr. Sumner,
Yes.
Mr. Tevz,
Yes.
Mr. Hood,
Yes.
and Mrs. Downing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next thing is the district calendar, which is included in your packet. It's always tricky to make sure that we have the right number of days, but there's 180 student days, 184 staff days, teacher days, and then we have our professional development days, and there are certain early release days, and some are parent conferences. But we're going to continue in this format the way we started doing it last year with this new template. I think it's much easier and more user-friendly for families to read. But I didn't know if anybody had any questions, and if we were ready to take a vote. Once the committee votes, we can certainly put this out there and make it public. Sorry.
I don't have any questions. Does any members have any questions or concerns with the calendar as presented?
And this has been vetted out with the teachers union and the leadership in the district.
Okay.
Actually, I do have, sorry, Jen, one more question, and I'm gonna mute myself because it's gonna be very loud in a second. So Ford Middle School, it says 8 a.m. start time and AES 8:50 a.m. Can we just confirm if that's doors open or kids sitting in their classrooms?
I believe it's when the doors open, but I'll double check that and we'll put a note in there, whichever way it is. I want to just double check with the principals, but I believe that's when the doors open.
Okay, yeah, if we could just clarify that and put it on there for parents, that would be great.
Yep, no problem.
Okay. All right, so looks like we can vote to approve, or may I request a vote to approve the school district calendar for fiscal year 21-20 or school year 21-22.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I'm sorry, who was the second?
Tevz.
Thank you.
He beat you to it. All right.
Everything's a competition.
We'll move into our vote.
Mrs. Gomes,
Yes.
Mr. Sumner,
Yes.
Mr. Tevz,
Yes.
Mr. Hood,
Yes.
and Mrs. Downing.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And as you know, I'm really hopeful that the calendar will stay the way it is, which is a traditional calendar for the school year. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we are headed in the right direction. Before I get to the return to school plan update, I'd like to jump down to the preliminary budget update, if you don't mind. Because I think the return to school plan update might involve some additional discussion. So you have 3 sheets. The one that says FY 2022 budget, which is like an overview, and it's a comparison of the years starting with 2019, 2020 budget, and it goes all the way up to 2022 budget, what was proposed, and it's got the changes. Basically, what you're going to hear from me tonight is a preliminary overview. We actually have a meeting tomorrow with the budget subcommittee to really get into the weeds, and you will have a full presentation next week, but I want you to know what we're headed into for next week. And overall, we're at this point in time, and it's always changing until next week, a 2.6% increase. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but we're actually, in my opinion, this is probably the best situation we've been in since I've been in the district, which is amazing considering that we're in the midst of a pandemic. And I'll explain that in a few minutes. So if we go to the sheet, and I think this will clear up a lot of things, but the FY22 budget increases and decreases summary, I believe it was blue. Okay. So you'll see that there's an increase for salaries, which is very typical with the contracts, salaries go up, right? So we also are looking to add positions, which you're going to hear a lot more about that next week. But definitely there's an increase in salaries. You'll see instruction. This is a very interesting one. There's a huge increase. And that's because if you look at the line that talks about text, including digital subscriptions, which is curriculum, we've never had a line that addresses curriculum. We've always basically relied on a town article, go to town meeting to see if we can get our curriculum approved and passed. And, you know, we have to justify why we want the curriculum. I believe that we need a line in the curriculum, in the budget, I mean, to have curriculum on a yearly basis. And this may be the year to finally get the line in. And I'm not saying that we will never go after articles for curriculum, but curriculum is extremely expensive. And we're so far behind in our district that if we don't put a line in, it's just going to take a long time. So that huge increase, as you can see, it's $244,000. $240,000 of that is curriculum money. But, you know, quite honestly, that's the meat and potatoes of what we do. That this is why we are a school and it's teaching and learning. There should definitely be a line. And keeping in the back of your head as we go through this, even with this amount in this line, we're still only at a 2.6% increase. So going down to contract services, you'll see that we have some savings there with special education. There's a bit of an increase for technology, but as you recall this year, we had the DDoS mitigation, and we also have some professional contract services that are needed with all of the technology that we're dealing with. We've really tried to, you know, ramp up our system so that everything is secure. Professional development, you'll see another savings. And, you know, it took me a minute to figure out why are we saving so much money, but I am in my last year of NSIP. So I guess I graduate this year from my program. So that's a huge savings to the district next year. Obviously, but we still have professional development going on. Transportation, that's not completely accurate. And I know that Mrs. Flynn is actually going to get into this in her report tonight. So I'll really let her do that. But that $52,000 for the regular day big bus is actually inaccurate. It's $62,000 and it's overall a 6% increase on that bus bid. So we did expect it to go up, but the good news is we originally planned for a 5% increase when we did the budget, and we're at 6%. So again, not too bad with our figures. Facilities, we have an increase in facilities, but actually that is just reflective of our actual spending. So typically facilities, those are the places that we tend to cut first, right? And then we end up having to spend the money anyway. So we put the money back in of what we actually spend. And this is the real interesting bonus area, if you will, the tuition. And this is where we're getting a lot of savings. We are projected to be at 30 students less next year for our high school tuitions. And that's a major savings. And that's why when we're talking about new positions that we're going after, because we believe we need these positions, things like a reading specialist, a library media specialist, perhaps math coaches or interventionists, whatever it is that the principals and the department heads advocated for, we need this. There is no fluff in this budget. And again, to be at a 2.6% increase where we haven't even started to look at cuts with all of the additions, I think, again, we're in very, very good shape. And then just another way, if you go to the sheet that is the detailed budget request, I'm not going to go through that whole thing, but that just goes over how the salaries are broken out. And you can see that, we are actually looking at 8.9 new FTEs, full-time equivalent positions. And again, one of the positions that we're looking at are building-based subs. They've been so successful for us this year and so helpful for our students and staff. We want to make them a part of the staff. Instead of calling in random subs, these folks have been able to be trained with our staff. They know our students. So we're really advocating for that. We've got facilities maintenance person, a half-time person, and our school instructional leadership team stipends for staff. But again, you're going to see a full out presentation next week. So anyway, that's detailed the salaries. And it goes into expenses. And then you'll see we're looking at a $15.3 million budget, which is a 2.6% increase. Now, some of these might change slightly from now until next week because Mrs. Flynn and I are working diligently from now until then. And right up until next week, things could change. We could have a move-in, a student move in and tuition change, but you will have the most up-to-date, accurate information next week. But I thought it was really important that the whole committee, I know the budget subcommittee is familiar with this, but it was important to me that the whole committee gets a preliminary overview of where we're going with the budget so that for next week, you see and you understand where we're at. Does anybody have any questions?
No questions. Thanks for the update.
Okay.
Looking good.
And I want to thank the budget subcommittee too for their work on this. And obviously Mrs. Flynn has done a tremendous amount of work with the bus bids. And I know she's going to talk more about that. So thank you. So the big item on my report.
Dr. Bailey, Sarah's got a question.
Oh,
Sorry.
go ahead, Mrs. Gomes.
I just want to reiterate again how important it is to have that curriculum in our yearly budget. I've been part of the budget subcommittee for 4 years now, and it never dawned on me that a curriculum should be in a budget. And thank you, Dr. Bailey, for explaining why it should be in there and why it's so important. And it makes total sense to have it in there. And why it wasn't in there all years past, I don't know. I can't speak to that. But I just want to make it a point that it is very important to have this in there because I know there's going to be some questions about it, but it's definitely needed in there. And I ask for the support of the committee to keep it there, regardless of, what's said, out in the public.
Well, it's the work we do. I couldn't agree more. And if we want to get on a consistent adoption cycle with our curriculum, having it in the budget is the way to do this. When we, rely on the town to give us 50,000 or 75,000, I mean, one program can cost 200,000 in one shot. So the money goes very quickly. So we really want to establish that new line. And this was the year we were able to do it because we're in a situation with 30 less students. It's just working out. So I hope you all feel that way, but I feel like we're actually going into a good situation, I believe, for the district.
we're definitely moving forward and in the right direction of where we wanted to be 3-4 years ago, with making sure that all our students have the curriculum and have the education that they need moving forward, and keeping it in line with everything that's going on with how many updates curriculums get with books and subjects and everything like that. Not having it in the budget, and like I said, and how Dr. Bailey said, having the town have to vote on it every year is just, it doesn't make sense. And it's not forward thinking and into what our students need. So thank you.
And, you know, just a quick, huge shout out to our teachers, because in the midst of this pandemic, they're learning new curriculum to teach to our students. And they understand the rationale as to why we need that new curriculum, but it is not easy at all. It's very challenging to learn a lot of new curriculum at once and teach in a pandemic and live stream and do it all. So kudos to our teaching staff. They're really making it happen. And you watch the videos last meeting and today, and I just see the joy when I look at our children and our students, and I'm really pleased to see that. So thank you so much. Any other questions about the preliminary budget for next week? I know we're going to get into this in the weeds a lot more next week.
I had a couple, but I'm going to hold until next week until we see the final. But my, frankly, I scanned through this line item by line item, and 2.6% did not strike me as unreasonable. And I didn't see, to your point, a lot of fluff here. And I think all of the points are valid in terms of making sure that we have the right items in here to benefit our kids. So, but I'll wait till next week.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so the next item, the last item actually on my report tonight, is the return to school plan update. And I am just going to share my screen. Here we go. All right. Okay. Can everybody see that okay?
Yep.
Okay. So as you know, we talked about this recently, but Commissioner Riley, Commissioner of Education in Massachusetts, has gone to the Board of Education, and he is developing a plan to get all of elementary students back into school by April, 5 days a week. So the focus is really on elementary students. And the good news is that we've been planning increased in-person learning for quite some time now with our leadership staff. The teachers are more involved at this point. And we've really been focused on solutions. We know there's a lot of barriers during this pandemic, but I'm going to go basically through the big idea, the dates of what we're looking for. And tonight I would appreciate a vote because I believe that this is something the school committee should be voting on as it is a model of learning. But you'll see that this is in alignment with what the commissioner wants. Now, the Board of Education has a scheduled meeting on Friday to vote on this. And if it goes through, communities and school districts will be required to have their students in full time. And, you know, there's probably a chance that people will lose funding if they don't have their students in, because it won't count for the structured learning time. So currently, probably for the majority of our school year, we're in a hybrid learning model, which is phase 3. And we're going to focus tonight on phase 4, which is how do we increase the in-person learning? What does that look like? Why are we going to do it? And how are we going to do it? We're going to discuss safety protocols, what teaching and learning will be like. And again, this is just a very broad overview tonight, as the teachers and administrators will continue to work on all of the logistics. We'll discuss what technology will be like moving forward, next steps, and then communication, what that should look like. So here's our current model. Okay, we've got students in cohort A coming to school Mondays and Tuesdays. And on Thursdays and Fridays, those same students are live streaming. And then it's the opposite for cohort B. They're live streaming on Mondays and Tuesdays, and they're in person on Thursday and Friday. All of our K-1 and high needs students are in person 4 days a week. And then the entire district is fully remote. And I'm really proud of this model because there's many districts right now that kids are just stepping foot into their buildings now after a year. We left school last March 13th, and students have been out for a year, and they're literally going back to school this week. So we've been in the mode of having kids in person, live streaming, which was a totally new way of teaching and learning for our students. But I will say that our staff and our students have really risen to the occasion. And you could see from the video that was presented tonight, just how engaged our kids are and our teachers. So again, kudos to them. So increasing in-person learning. And I know as we discuss this tonight, that not everybody is going to be in agreement perhaps, but I've been doing a lot of research for a year now on this to be sure that when we do what we do in Acushnet, it's always done with safety in mind. As you know, the numbers are working in our favor right now. The COVID numbers, the number of cases, the vaccines are coming, and I am hopeful and I'm advocating for our educators to be vaccinated in short order. We're working with the town to continue to advocate to get that done for our educators. So why do we need kids back in person? So first of all, as I mentioned, the Commissioner of Education, he's expecting students to come back by April 5th. He is focusing on elementary, and our district believes that if we can do it with elementary, we can certainly do our best to do it with our middle school. So we're determined to get all kids back. We know that there's been a lot of mental health issues that have occurred. We know that we have families who are struggling throughout this pandemic. We've had people not able to work because they've had to stay home and watch their children during this pandemic. And we especially know that our youngest students don't do as well with remote learning as our oldest students do. So, you know, the good news is when the commissioner came out, our leadership team felt as though we were pretty much ready to go at this point with our plans for a safe return. And I'm going to focus on safety as well tonight, because I know that's a top priority for us, and it's a concern for many families. So here is what we're looking to do. Starting on Monday, March 8th, we are bringing back all of grade 2 students 4 days a week in person. So again, those grade 2 students will be coming to school Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and they will be fully remote through April 1st. Then we want to look at March 22nd, and we will be looking to bring back grades 3, 4, 5, and 6, 4 days in person. And then on March 29th, grades 7 and 8 will return 4 days in person. And then our goal is April 5th, our entire district, K through 8, will be back 5 days in person. And the reason why we need a month's time is there's a lot of logistics to work out. Right now, our teachers have their planning time on, the majority of it is on Wednesdays. We've got to redo schedules. We are redoing bus routes. We are bringing in furniture from storage. We didn't want to take the time to do a phased in approach where, you know, we're doing one grade because that is a huge disruption for the buses as well. And I'm going to talk more about transportation, but, you know, in talking to the leadership, this is what we feel we can handle. I do want to say though, if at any point in time, things are not working out and we need to pivot and make a change, then we will communicate that to our families and definitely to the school committee. But we have a good 2 weeks right now with our second graders. Our teachers are super excited to get all those kids back in for 4 full days. They're going to be back for a month and then they'll be back 5 days. But I've been hearing from second grade families because I've had an opportunity to have a lot of conversations with them. And they are just so excited to come back in person. I just want to stress that even though we're making this recommendation, this is not going back to normal. This is not pre-COVID. This is still teaching and learning during a pandemic. So our safety protocols, this is huge. All safety guidelines will remain the exact same. We do not want to change anything else except for bringing more kids back in person with the social distancing. And I'm going to talk a bit about that in a minute. So for example, our middle school students, they are in a classroom and the teachers move from classroom to classroom. So there's less students moving. And especially now that we have more students in our building, that's going to stay the same right now. We are not ready to have our middle school students changing classes right now, just that movement. We want to keep everything the same. The mask breaks the same. Water breaks the same because it's been working beautifully. We've had no evidence of transmission. And with the social distancing, the desks will be spaced 3 to 6 feet. And of course, greater than 3 feet whenever possible. So the reason why we're doing that is because we can't fit everybody back at 6 feet. That's impossible. But I have a document that the commissioner shared with the superintendents with signatures of over 300 physicians that support 3 to 6 feet. Now that we've been in this pandemic for more than a year, there's actually been studies out that show there is no real difference between 3 and 6 feet in terms of transmission, as long as we wear the masks. So that's why the medical community right now, they're really backing the commissioner. I know the CDC is still at 6 feet, and again, they're throughout the country, right? But if you recall the WHO, the World Health Organization, they actually gave the recommendation last summer of 3 feet as a recommendation. And many European countries have been doing it. What we're seeing with the research right now is the schools that are open in person, where there is social distancing 3 to 6 feet, there is no evidence or little evidence of any transmission of COVID. So we believe we're ready to do this because our kids need to be here. You know, when this first started, we talked about the fact that, you know, this isn't an educational crisis, it's a health crisis, right? But we're at the point now where we've been in this for a year that it could easily turn into an educational crisis, and we don't want to go further with that. Excuse me 1 second. All right. So lunch protocols. We're planning right now to figure out lunches at a good distance, at least 6 feet, but Jesse has promised us guidance by next Wednesday. So there'll be very specific guidance for students eating lunch, what that will look like, how far apart they need to be. And everything that Jesse recommends is reviewed by the state's COVID team, which consists of a team of doctors. So we're waiting on that guidance, but at the same time, we're also planning and getting our furniture ready, and we're going to be ready. This is the part I really was important to me to review tonight, because the transportation guidance has been updated. And, you know, I've always been transparent on how I feel. And I'm going to be honest, I don't agree with the new guidance, and I'm going to explain why. This is the new transportation guidance in a nutshell. Masks must still be worn at all times. Windows must be kept open at least 2 inches at all times. Students must still be assigned to a single bus and a single seat. And the capacity limitations for elementary school students have been lifted. The reason why the capacity for elementary school has been lifted is because obviously the goal is to get elementary students across the state back to school. For middle and high school, because our community right now has a high prevalence of COVID, there is a 2-student bench limit. My feeling, and this is my personal feeling, but I've consulted with the Board of Health. I've consulted with our COVID crisis response team in terms of the fire chief, the police chief, and our administrators. You know, the buses right now, it's just a very dense area. And if we start packing kids on the bus, it's not a controlled environment. Right now, it's not bad because there's less kids on the bus. So my recommendation is if parents, if they can bring their kids to school on their assigned in-person days, my recommendation would be to please do that. Please drive them to school. I talked to about 13 families this week in second grade, and the majority of those families, when I asked them the question, what are you doing about transportation? And they said they're more comfortable sticking with driving. Now, what we're doing is we're sending out surveys in terms of who really needs the transportation. We're not going to turn people away, but once we figure out new assigned seats and how many children are actually assigned to the bus, if we have a greater number of kids on that bus, we may be recommending for bus only, you know, it's a recommendation, double masks. You know, bus drivers have not been vaccinated yet. Our teachers have not been vaccinated yet. To me, that is the safest way to go at this point in time, trying to keep with what we have with transportation because it is working. So if, again, if we change too many things, we don't know if we have a bump in the road, we're not going to know where we go wrong. So the expectation for families will be that students will be expected to attend all in-person scheduled days unless they are out sick or for a COVID-related reason. This is not a choice that, well, I'm going to sign in today with my computer. You know, we're opening school, or we're proposing to do more in person because we believe that our kids need to be in front of teachers. You can see from the videos, there's just so much more engagement and interaction that we can actually get physically with students than when they are at home, and it's a much more controlled environment. But teachers will continue to make instruction and class materials available to students should they be absent for COVID-related concerns. So for example, by bringing in more students, we have the potential of having more students be designated as close contacts. That's a real possibility, but I'm very encouraged with our numbers. They've been, you know, you haven't seen a letter from me. I'm knocking on wood here this week, in the past few days. You know, it's definitely moving in the right direction. We will remain a one-to-one school district using G Suite Google platforms. So, you know, teachers will have those computers available should a student need to be out for COVID-related reasons. But our goal is to really have all of our students in class with our teachers. And if, you know, I think I have it in coming up, but parents should really communicate with teachers on what's going on so they know. Yeah, teachers aren't going to know to sign on the computer if a child is just out one day randomly, right? We want to return back as normal as possible. And the commissioner's goal, Commissioner Riley's goal, is to basically get rid of these other models of remote and hybrid and return to traditional in-person school. We believe that by doing this now, we will be in better shape, working out all these kinks now. In the spring, we will be in really terrific shape for the fall if the numbers continue the way they go. So what we've done is communication and transportation surveys have already gone out to families. We're already working on new bus list for grade 2. We want to see how many more students want to take the bus. And again, if it's significantly more students on the bus, we will be putting out a recommendation to double up on the mask just on the bus. We had a voluntary staff meeting yesterday that we held to review this information with all of our staff. And I've been working diligently with our union leadership around these issues. And I have to say that it's really been solution focused, and it will continue to be that way. I have weekly meetings with union leadership to talk about any potential concerns they may have, but we're really working together to try to make this work. And then after this meeting, depending on how the vote goes, I would plan to make an announcement, an official announcement to our families, and communicate, to the rest of the district, grades 3 through 8, by sending out another transportation survey, and letting them know the official dates of when we're expecting them back. And right now, that's pretty much ongoing on a daily basis, is really the details and really getting into the weeds of this plan. The specific details and logistics are being planned on a daily basis so we can get this right. And, this isn't one person, doing this. This is an entire district and community coming together to make this work. And very important that parents communicate with teachers and or the principal should there be a concern, should there be a serious health issue, a close contact issue at home. We know that we're still working in the pandemic. So we know it's not totally back to normal, but in terms of safety protocols, we will be super vigilant with our safety protocols. We are a controlled environment in school, and we are super excited to welcome our students back. And that is the big picture overview of what we're looking at. I would love to engage the committee in some discussion. And if you have any concerns and questions, but eventually after the discussion, it's very important that we take a vote.
Dr. Bailey, you said you talked to 13 families in the second grade.
Yes.
This week. And I'm sorry, did you say most of them, all of them are prepared to send their kids back?
Yep, I could not reach 2 families because their mailbox is full or something like that. So out of 2 families, that was it. But the rest of them have said yes. And I believe one of them is still thinking about it but wants to have the child back full-time by April 5th anyway. So, I don't think any family wants their child to be the only student on a computer screen when everybody else is engaged in the classroom. This would not be recommended if I did not believe that this was safe for our students and staff. And if at any time we believe that we need to pivot, we will, and we'll make a change because our staff knows how to adapt. Our students know how to adapt after going through this for this last year. They're very resilient, and they've really learned some life skills. So I was very pleased, Mr. Hood, with the amount of families, after speaking to them directly, that these 13 families originally expressed concern on the original survey we sent home. And after the phone calls and explaining what I went over tonight, they definitely would love to send their students back in person. So the numbers are good right now in terms of second grade. And we're going to see how this works out starting Monday with our second graders. Mrs. Gomes.
I have a question about how we're one-to-one right now. When we start having students go back to school, and I don't know if this is ironed out yet or not, but would it be expected for the kids to bring their computers to school, or would they stay home, or would it depend on the classroom? I'm just wondering as a parent how that would work.
So that particular detail, I don't know yet. We're still working out all of those logistics. If I had to guess, I would imagine we'd look at grade levels. I'd leave it up to teachers and teams and principals to really get into the logistics of that. But the good news is we are one-to-one, and students will have access to their laptops to do their research and their work here at school, and a lot of the digital platforms, that we have.
So parents out there, wait till your teachers or principals speak to you to let you know what to do. So you're not, for the second graders, not everybody bringing all their laptops to class if it's not needed. So
yeah, so we will send out communication to families I did send a letter home. I think the biggest issue right now is the date for second grade. And if the committee is supportive of this plan tonight, then a letter will go out with all the final dates. And again, these are goals. Things could change, but we want to shoot for these goals. We think they're manageable, and working together with everyone in the district, we believe we can make it work. Mr. Tevz?
Yeah, Dr. Bailey, in regards to the, I guess the double masking on the bus idea, just curious, who's going to enforce that?
I think our students have been so great about following rules. You know, I don't know that it will be totally enforced, but we're going to wait and see how many kids, if we're actually going to need that recommendation. And if we do, we're going to talk to family, we're going to communicate that to families. I spoke to the health agent in the town. He thinks it's a great idea because he said, again, those buses are dense areas with a lot of people. And the last thing that we want to do is have any transmission coming into school or within that area. It will be safer with 2 masks on the bus.
Well, I think there's, and then, so I was just concerned of course, of saying, hey, you know, the kid has, you know, he's about to step on the bus and he's got 1 mask on. And you're like, oh, well, you can't come on the bus. Is that going to be?
No, we would provide, we have boxes of masks. I'm sure that Mrs. Flynn would be more than happy to give these boxes out to the buses.
They already have them.
They already have them. Yeah, we don't turn anyone away. We have plenty of masks to go around. And like I said, our students have been really good about wearing masks.
And then
it's a safety reason.
Right. And I think the, or at least the CDC's stance on that was, you know, it could be, you know, to wear 2 masks, it could be better. They're not sure. But the recommendation was really a cloth mask worn over a medical mask. And I would think that, you know, if you're just kind of doubling up, you know, 2 masks that aren't very good, it could just be kind of an illusion of safety or just provide an appearance. But regardless, it means that, you know, a couple of times before school, they're going, you know, hand to face to put on and remove that second mask. So I'm just, I'm not sure if there's some perhaps other ideas that could be kicked around that might be a better solution. I don't know. But I just had a few concerns there just from an enforcement standpoint and then, you know, potential, you know, illusion of safety on it. So I personally, I would think more about just instead of making it, you know, how do we make it less dense? So if the concern is density, like how do we make it less dense? Could we stay 1 child per seat somehow? Could we revisit the district and the town's stance on who would be provided, you know, transportation? We've talked about, you know, kind of that radius around school or you know, certain mileage, a mile or 2 from school. You know, should we be revisiting that and looking at the potential of getting more families to bring their kids to school? It sounds like we're going to have a lot of people volunteering to do that.
Yes.
But I'm just thinking, you know, in terms of trying to reduce that density rather than trying to come up with, you know, these solutions that may or may not be effective or perhaps detrimental. Because that's just my thoughts on it.
And I'm just throwing it out as an idea after talking to the health agent about the potential issue of putting too many kids on a bus. I think our families, the people who can drive their children to and from school have been wonderful, but I am also realistic to know that people do need the bus. So we're going to make sure that, you know, if people need the bus, we want to make it as safe as possible. So I know that we can certainly look at the radius. I think the last time we might have looked at that, it wasn't a large number of students who we would exclude from the bus, but we can certainly, depending on those surveys that we get back and who signs up for the bus, we'll look at everything. We're just trying to make it as safe as possible and keep the transmission out of our schools.
Any other comments on the proposed plan? Yeah, Mr. Sumner?
Paula, have we identified any classrooms that might not meet the 3-foot distancing?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
And if, our goal is, no less than 3. But we probably have some classrooms that can go greater than 3 based on our numbers. So it could be 4, could be 5, I'm not sure. But right now, the furniture, I believe, has been moved into the grade 2 classrooms. So I will be following up on that prior to Monday. We're going to see how that goes, but I believe we've already started to take furniture out of storage to get our other classrooms ready. This is not something that we can do overnight. This takes a lot of preparation, planning, and measuring and taping the floors to make sure that the chairs and desks, so the kids know exactly where their chairs are supposed to be. And they feel safe when they know where they're supposed to be. But if we do have an issue of a situation where we can't go, we have more students than what we can fit, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has advised us to call them, because we have asked that question, that if we get to a point where we can't fit the students at less than 3 feet, they said to work with them and call them. But, I think our team is very solution focused and we will figure it out. I have no doubt at all. But if we do run into a little snag like that, we will work together to come up with the best possible and, most importantly, safest solution for our students and staff.
Dr. Bailey, where are we at statewide in terms of the advocacy to get our teachers vaccinated? Has there been any forward movement on that discussion?
So I do know that tonight, the Massachusetts Teachers Association, I believe they're meeting tonight, and I do believe they're strongly advocating to have educators vaccinated, which I'm fully in agreement with. Earlier today, I sent you a copy of a letter that we sent from the town. It was co-signed by all of the town officials to advocate for getting educators and school staff vaccinated. And I believe I heard something today that President Biden might be putting down some type of an executive order to have teachers vaccinated at least a first dose sometime this month. But I didn't hear it myself. Somebody communicated that to me about 5 minutes before the meeting began, which I was happy to hear about. So I do believe that we will be getting it for those who want to get it. I'm hoping that we can do it locally, because then again, we can figure out scheduling. But I've been communicating with our staff and advocating. We were ready to go in Acushnet, and then that didn't work out, as you probably heard in the community from Chief Gallagher. So we're hopeful that the state will change their mind, especially now with the Johnson & Johnson vaccination. There's more vaccine. So I'm hoping, it doesn't really matter to me what vaccine we get. I just want educators to be prioritized as soon as possible.
I'm glad to see that our town is taking such a leadership stance on this, both on administering the vaccine on a town level, but also to advocate for our educators. So really glad to see that we're a part of that.
It's really been nice working together with folks from the town. I mean, on every level. So we talk about transportation, more families would be driving their students. We'd have more of a line. The police department is already on it in terms of planning for traffic. We'd rather have a little bit of a nuisance possibly with traffic than people getting sick, right? So we're trying to come up with the best case scenarios, the safest scenarios for our students and staff. But everybody has been super supportive of this plan.
Okay. Any further comment, questions? Okay. So Dr. Bailey, you need a vote from us to proceed with the plan presented for bringing students back.
Yes, and as I just want to reiterate, we're going for it, the whole district, not just elementary, as I've outlined those dates. And if the committee supports this, then communication will be coming out to families in short order. And we will continue our planning.
Okay. If I can request a motion, please, to approve the plan presented by Dr. Bailey to bring our students back to in-person learning in the schedule that was presented, keeping in mind that at any moment, if there's any indication of in-school transmission, that we will be agile and we will pivot necessary.
Absolutely.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into our vote.
Mrs. Gomes,
Yes.
Mr. Sumner,
Yes.
Mr. Tebs,
Yes.
Mr. Hood,
Yes.
and Mrs. Downing.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think you just made a lot of people very happy. So thank you so much. And that concludes my report for tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Bailey. Mrs. Flynn, over to you.
Hey, hi everyone. I'll just give you a brief update on what's changed since we last talked about the budget. So if we'll go through my business manager's report on the budget update to the school committee, where I list the potential surplus that I believe is going to be available at the end of the year. Some of the things that changed, we've switched from having some surplus in teacher salaries. We're using that to pay a long-term sub that's covering a long-term absence. But I also offset that by the daily subs that we're not, the amounts that we're not expending. Typically, I don't include those until it gets closer to May and June because it's really tough to tell how much you're going to spend in subs. But this year, because of our building base subs, we've had very little utilization. So I thought it prudent to include that in the overall surplus at this time. We also, now that December 31st deadline has passed, teachers have up until then to submit a request for tuition reimbursement. And so it looks like of the 28,000 that we budgeted for teachers and paras, unused is about 15,000. So we'll have that available to us after May, after we pay out all of the tuitions reimbursements. And these are for teachers and paras to take courses for credit. So typically a college level course for credit. And they get a certain amount reimbursed per their contract every year. We also had some changes in our tuitions, high school surplus decrease. We had an overall net of 1 student lost from Fairhaven, but 1 student gained at New Bedford High since the last billing. But the difference there is some student special education charges came in a little bit higher. Also, at a district tuition decrease from a roster update as well, some additional tuitions that were added, very negligible. Out of district tuition surplus increase, also negligible, about 2,000. So these are the small adjustments that we're making month to month or sometimes week to week. So I'll capture those every month in an update. And then we had some more COVID costs, which I'll talk about next, actually. So updated on your COVID-19 expenditures, I added in the new fund that we have from DESE. It's the CVPF, the Coronavirus Prevention Fund. Okay, that was $54,325 that we received that we have to spend by June 30th. So what we did is the technology department, Mr. Oliver, purchased about 20 of the touchscreen panels to use throughout the district. And those are going to really help us, with some of the remote learning if we still need to do that. So we have that. So we use that part of that grant and also part of our ESSER grant and part of our Title IV grant to pay for that entire amount. I believe it was about 80 some odd thousand for those 20 touch panels. So like I said, the technology department, we've been working real closely with them to provide what the students and the teachers need at this time. So we also have the CVRF grant. That was the big grant at the beginning of the year that was originally to be spent by December 31st. They extended it to June. And again, that's what's paying for our building-based subs, our additional custodial staff, and some supplies. So that's fully expended at this point. Also, the ESSER is, the CVPF is, And we're getting closer to the town cares amount. If you recall, the Board of Selectmen allotted us about 350,000. So I'm just adding things onto that apply as they needed. And then as we get to that amount, you know, I'm going to be working with the town accounting office for the reimbursements. They're working on that for us. Okay. Upcoming too for next year is ESSER2, an additional 305,000. So the district will have to decide how best that can be spent, most likely for next year and beyond.
I had a quick question there because it talks about the money, right, to safely reopen schools and measure and effectively address significant learning loss. Do we know what that looks like at this point? What that
Sure.
measure?
Yeah, that I'm not sure. You know, I'm not sure if Dr. Bailey has any thoughts on that. But one of the ideas that I've talked about with the principals and the director of student services would be to have some summer learning opportunities. And so that would certainly address some of the learning loss, and I believe would be, you know, an allowable expenditure under that grant. We haven't really talked a lot about the details of that grant, but that might be something, you know, to do that. Other than anything else, you know, I'm not sure.
I just want to add, Mrs. Flynn, that our whole budget for next year is based on accounting for learning loss. So when people came forth with their proposals and recommendations, the question was put out to them, what are you going to do to accommodate learning loss? You know, we're looking at summer programming, not perhaps just for students on IEPs, but all of our students should be having the opportunity as much as possible, if we can get funding, to have some learning academies, intense learning academies, whatever it is that's needed. And I'm sure that more money, stimulus money, will be coming down. But that is a very big focus, and that will take more than 1 year to accomplish. So, you know, we're very well aware of the learning loss.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
And as we continue to plan for that grant, I'll start to include that in my update. Right now, that's kind of the next step that we need to go to. A couple of new items that we added to the town cares expenditures and the grant expenditures real quick. Like I said, the touch panels for remote learning, some more Google academic licenses, some Chromebook sleeves for our younger students for their Chromebooks to help protect those a little bit better. We also fully expended the payroll for the CVRF on our building-based subs and our custodians. So we're funding those positions out of the local budget right now, and it's important that we continue those positions, you know, at least through the end of this year. Also, a few new expenditures for the town cares grant. We had a handful of just general tech supplies related to remote learning. Some more touch panels. The first 2 that we purchased, we charged to the town cares. So I think we have a total of 22 new touch panels. Those were last bought many years ago when we had the ARRA funds. We started buying those. So it's really time to start replacing them. So we're lucky we were able to do that. And then again, the updated amount for our container rentals that we're accessing right now, yanking all our furniture out of there. So hopefully we'll be able to get rid of those things by the end of the school year because they're really not too nice looking out there. So that's it for the expenditures update and the budget update. I did also include a section on grants. I know a few months ago rather, I did a preview of all of our grants and funds. So I thought at this point I would just catch up to where we are in spending with those grants. Typically the Department of Ed grants, you would expect to spend them either by 6:30 or by 8:31. Some of them go throughout the summer. But some of these grants, you can also carry them forward. So some of them, as you can see, we've spent in full, and a few we have a lot more spending to do. Like I said, the Coronavirus Prevention Fund, that's been fully expended. The Coronavirus Relief Fund has been fully expended. The ESSER CARES Fund has been fully expended, and a lot of those originally had a deadline of 6:30 or even 12:30. So we were really aggressive at the start to get those spent, of course, because the point of it was to have money to purchase or supply what you needed to safely reopen the schools. So it's not, surprising that that's all spent. Our what I'll call our regular normal grants that we see, the teacher quality and education, that pays our teacher mentors and also our administrative mentors. So we will have that fully expended, I believe, by the end of the school year. The small special education early childhood, it just pays for a small portion of a salary and some supplies. That's already fully expended. The large special education entitlement grant, that pays for some CARAs. So that portion will be expended by the end of the year. Also secretarial staff, I believe a teacher's salary and some contract services and supplies. So we've got a little bit more spending to do on that. Title I grant, right now we're meeting tomorrow to discuss and update where we're at with that. Typically, we would be further along in spending with Title I because it's salaries, but we have had a vacancy in one of the positions since the beginning of the year that we have not been able to fill. So that accounts for a large chunk of it. And also we've had some leave of absences. So we need to figure out how best to spend that money, and that's what we're going to be doing tomorrow. And finally, the Title IV Safe and Healthy Schools Grant. We use that to update our ALICE training, to re-up with our subscription. And we also purchased some social emotional materials through Mrs. Betancourt's office. They've purchased some materials that we feel the students can benefit and the teachers during the pandemic. And we still have about 3,800, and it's for basically curricular materials. So we still have that to spend. So that's just a quick update on the grants. And of course, these are in addition to all the local budget funds and the CARES funds. And one important thing I will tell you about the grants, they are very particular in a lot of them where they say you can't supplant, it has to supplement. So in other words, if we were having budget difficulties, which fortunately we're not this year, we can't say, well, we're going to take those budget expenditures, the local expenditures, and flip them over to the grant because we have money in the grant. The grant has to be in addition to. So you really have to be careful with that you're not supplanting, as they say. So sometimes, people might see that we have an awful lot of money here, but it really cannot be used to offset the local budgets. In some cases, yes, it can. That new $300,000 grant that we're going to be getting, the ESSER2, can be, but for the most part, the rest of them can't. So I just wanted to, make that general point at this point in time. Does anyone have any questions about the budget or grants or any of the COVID-19 expenditures? Yes.
So just to clarify what tomorrow's subcommittee is, I know we have a surplus this year. And I know in many years past, we have been denied a lot of funding. And I just want to make sure that that's going to be one of the topics that we talk about tomorrow, is to sort of take a look at everything that's been denied or had to be cut, to do with maintenance and anything else that we can talk about that we can use these funds for, to better our district and in our buildings and anything else to improve our district. So that will be talked about tomorrow, correct? Yes.
I believe that's on the agenda,
Yes.
Paul?
Okay.
Yes, okay.
Okay, yeah, that's really important to be in a position that we're in right now. Let's take a look at things that have had to be cut and prioritized and denied, and take care of as much as we can to use those funds responsibly and take care of our district.
Does anybody else have any questions? No. All right, I will move on to the transportation bid. So as you know, we had the bid opening on Friday for student transportation. We had one bidder submit a bid, our current vendor, Emerald Bus. I had sent you a communication about that on Friday, and I sent an update today on that to do with the late bus. So basically, like I said, we had one bidder, Emerald Bus. They put in the bid for the home to school, late bus, monitors if we use them, field trips, everything that we asked for. And over the course of the past few days, I have reviewed all their documents like we discussed in the last meeting to make sure that everything we asked for was complete and in order, and they did do that, so that is good. So such things that we look for to make sure they included a certificate of insurance and proof of future insurability, proof of bondability, proof of surety, their preventative maintenance programs, the safety programs, a list of their drug testing policy, query checks, accident history, any pending litigation. So everything that we asked that be included in the bid, they included. So that would make them a responsive bidder. And that's one of the criteria, as I discussed. The next criteria is responsible. And with Emerald Bus, they've been servicing us since before I was here. So they've been servicing us for over 15, probably 20 years. So we are our own best reference on that, but they also have listed other local districts that they service. So I believe they have the capacity, of course, to continue with this contract. So what they put the bid in for, that the bid is awarded on, is the home to school, the per day rate per bus. And so they submitted a bid for next year of $338 per day on 10 of the buses. Now remember, we run one bus for New Bedford High, it's a separate lower price on. So the 10 buses, they submitted it at $338. The one bus that only does the high school is $297. So the increase from last year to this year is $19 on each of the 10 buses and $49 on the one bus. So the total increase over the previous year is $43,000. So now what Dr. Bailey mentioned when she talked about the increases in the budget, when I had prepared this for the budget, we did not have the bid opening yet. So in the budget, I had estimated a 5% increase, and it turns out that this is a 6% increase. I was hopeful that it would have come in a little bit lower, but realistically, I think that this is not unanticipated. We had a very large decrease over the past 3 years. So we're really not too far off from where we would have been 3 years ago, but for the decrease. So right now it's a 6% increase. Looking at some other districts, there's a Google Doc that business managers throughout the state have added to, and we are still at a fairly low per bus per day rate at $338. Some of our local districts around here, they are higher. They're in the $400 and $500 range, but they're also regional districts that may have some different nuances to their contract that might explain for why it's a lot bigger. But I still believe that this is a fair price. One thing that we may be in a position to do is negotiate with the lowest bidder. The law allows that. So I'm exploring that option right now. There's some changes that we may be able to make on insurance that might reflect a lower price. So I'll have that update for you at the next meeting, hopefully. So at this point in time, I said in my email that I needed to review the bid for completeness. I've done that. And I will ask for, if there's any discussion, after that, a vote on awarding the contract to Emerald Bus. And this would be a 3-year contract from July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2024 for student transportation. Yes, Mr. Tubbs.
Thank you, Ms. Flynn. Is there any particular reason why there's a 7.5% increase into year 2 of the contract, and then it scales down to 5.25% for the third?
I don't know. That's what Mr. Amaral Bus put in for their bid. The bid requires that each year be more than the previous. So that's the only requirement that we make. In other words, you can't come in at $500 this year, a big jump, and then lower it next year, but you can go increasing. So I don't know if he's anticipating perhaps maybe some payments on the buses that might be coming off of his roles, or some other expenditures that may be higher or may be lower from year to year. I think from my understanding, what the bus companies do is they take a look at the total cost to provide that service, from drivers to insurance to maintenance to fuel, any expenditures, and divide it over the cost of across the fleet, 11 buses. So why one year increases more than the next, I can't say specifically, but it could be just the way he figured his expenses.
Okay, I would just think from a budget standpoint on our part, it would be more predictable and manageable if we didn't have that bigger increase in year two, correct?
I agree, absolutely.
So, and there's also, I guess it's nominal, but time value of money would play into that as well. Like they're getting more money sooner in the 3-year contract. So you said it's negotiable. I didn't know if that was something that could potentially be negotiated, right? I was just curious if they would, like they were, I don't know how you would say it, playing games with it or something. I don't know,
Yeah, it's it is very difficult, especially when there's not a lot of competition. And I will say, I've got nothing but good things to say about the service Amaral Bus has provided us over the years, so that by no means is reflected of that. But this is something that schools face across the Commonwealth, that there's very little competition in these big bus bids. So it makes for, sometimes higher prices than you would like, or something such as this. I don't know, but I do know, I agree that it would be better from a budgeting standpoint. Sometimes we've had a 3% across the board increase from year to year, and that makes it a little bit more palatable. So I do know one thing that might help us out at this point for next year's budget is our 7th grade class is a little bit smaller than our 8th grade class this year. So we will likely see another decrease in tuition. Not by a lot, not by as much as this year, but the class is smaller. So that's something that, from year to year, you can have some big fluctuations in some of these bigger line items. So you just hope that they kind of equal each other out.
Yeah, right. I don't disagree. I think eventually you start looking at, okay, if the demographics are shifting in that way, then we might be getting to a discussion about what we're spending as a district per student, and then it becomes an issue with less students, I guess. But I guess I had another question, because we had spent some time about the style of the buses and trying to change it, the district stance on the style of buses to try to invite more competition, and it doesn't seem like we got that. Any ideas as to why? Or
I didn't hear from any of the districts, so I don't know why. I mean, I'm sorry, any of the vendors. I don't know why they, didn't put a bid in. This isn't atypical. I think vendors try to stay with the contracts they have, and they don't typically encroach into other districts. It could be, and this is just a guess on my part, that right now, just as it has been for a lot of other industries, it's been difficult for the school bus industry, and they may just be trying to hang on to what they have and not, trying to expand their business at this point in time. I did have only one other transportation contractor take out the bid, and they had just sent me a communication just this week that they, were declining to put a bid in. So I did only have interest from 2 bus companies to take out the bid to look at.
Ron, you had a question? You're on mute.
I've got it, sorry. I just noticed, this is a silly thing, but I noticed that there's a minimum trip charge on the field trip that didn't exist before. Is that new? And do we ever have a situation where we wouldn't hit this minimum anyway? I'm just curious why that showed up now.
Right, so that's something that we talked briefly about at at one of the last meetings. That was a suggestion to include that to offset the mileage, the per mile charge. So, so I think some of the longer trips running to Boston were more costly than they needed to be, and that was difficult. So that was a suggestion to try to,
I remember
not have a like a $100 trip and then a couple $100 trip. So try to minimize it.
The other question I had was on the late bus. Is that, it seemed like the cost, I know there was some, you sent a second email with the number, but it seemed like the cost increase was quite significant.
It did, yes. It did increase quite significantly, as you can see. Right now, the price per bus for a late bus, we run 2 late buses, north town, south of town, two times a week. This year, if we had it, we'd be paying $210, and the cost increased to $300. It is a big jump. And I can say that, in budgeting for the late bus, sometimes with each successive jump over the years, we've had to decrease the number of days offered. So to try to hold the dollar value of the late bus, to try to at least get something out of it. But we had to take it out of the budget for this year, and it really wouldn't have happened anyways, right? FY20, we had to take it out of the budget. FY19, we budgeted $15,360, and that was for 48 days at 160. So that was FY19. The cost of the late bus was 160, and the bid that was put in was 300. Now keep in mind, the award is not based on the late bus. The award is based on the regular route per day. So there's not the incentive of competition on the per bus per day for the late bus. The award is on just the home to school, but we require service for everything else. So right now in the budget for next year, I do have the late bus in for 40 days, and that's about $24,000. So, as we go through the budget process, we will see, what we can do with that. The preference is to always try to have it as much as possible because some families do rely on it. So we do what we can with that.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, if I could request a motion, please, to approve the Amaral bus contract.
I'll make a motion.
I'm sorry, question on that. Are we approving under the assumption that Ms. Flynn can go back and potentially further negotiate on the lowest bid? Is that what we're approving?
Correct. We're going to vote to award the contract to Amaral Bus, and actually in the written contract document, the amount is in there. So I'm not going to finalize that for anyone to sign yet until we can see if there is going to be a decrease.
Okay.
But that is dependent on whether we can make some changes to the insurance, because that could lower the cost, and that is something that we need to work with the town on as well. So there's a little bit of logistics with that.
Yeah, no, thank you though, Mr. Tebbs. I'm going to rephrase my motion. So what we're looking for here is a vote to award the contract to Amaral Bus.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay.
Mrs. Gomes?
Aye.
Mr. Sumner?
Yes.
Mr. Tebbs?
Yes.
Mr. Hood?
Yes.
Ms. Downing?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And only one last thing of note is you just have the school lunch reports for the month through the month of January. And, you know, as you can see, the lunch program continues to remain profitable. So that is a good thing. That's
Great.
all I have for
All right.
tonight.
Thank you, Mrs. Flynn. I'm going to circle back in the agenda to delegation. Ms. Benavides, are there any comments that have come in this evening?
Yeah, we had one from Michelle Gonzalez on Thomas Hill Road. She says, as a parent of a 7th grader, she's disappointed that the middle school isn't an option at this time, and that we're forgetting about Gary Mass's report last month, what is needed and why kids are at risk. The bottom line, we are far behind in curriculum, and it's not going to get better with hybrid for 2 days for middle schoolers. Kids need more one-on-one, whether you're in grade 2 or 8. So please make this a priority as you have done with AES as soon as possible.
Thank you for your comment, Mrs. Gonzalez. Okay, anything else? Any others that came in? No? Okay, great. All right, just noting there are some communications noted on our agenda that are included in members' packets. There is no executive session this evening. Our next meeting, we will have a public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 22 budget will be held remotely on Wednesday, March 10th at 5:30. And the next regular school committee meeting will be held remotely on Tuesday, April 6th at 5:30. So if there's no further discussion, if I could please request a motion to adjourn our meeting this evening.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any last discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into our vote to close.
Mrs. Gomes,
Yes.
Mr. Sumner,
Yes.
Mr. Tevz,
Yes.
Mr. Hood,
Yes.
and Mrs. Downing.
Yes. Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, you too.